Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy basketball waiver wire show, every Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific. We're getting deep into the season now. We're trying to stay afloat, but here with me, as always, is Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold. Hello, Casey.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. So we're missing Ross the Boss today. A little shout out to Ross the Boss. His stepfather is in the hospital having open heart surgery. So our thoughts are with you, Ross. We're thinking of you, and we'll do this show without you. Understandable excuses. We'll accept it. Now, as usual, we're looking for 60% and under rostership in Yahoo. So, Casey, we're going to go through the guards first. Now, remember, it's very fluid in the NBA. The positions, you can have point guard, shooting guard. You can have shooting guard, small forward. Anybody who qualifies a guard and that you primarily consider to be a guard is open game for discussion here. I'm going to throw it to you because otherwise it's just me talking to myself.
That's right. That makes sense. So
I'm going to throw it to you first. Jump in with a player or two.
All right. I'll give you two. How about Monte Morris in Denver? I'm looking at the last week's stats. He's playing 32 minutes a game. So he's certainly getting on the floor. Jamal Murray is not coming back anytime soon from that ACL tear. So I don't know who would take that time away from him when he's playing well. He's a top 50 player in this past 7 days. He's shooting 48% from the field. He's making his free throws when he gets them. He's averaging more than a steal a game and over four assists and 3 rebounds a game. So he's been playing really well, and he's getting a lot of playing time. And obviously, the more you play, the more you can contribute. So that's one. The second one I'm gonna mention is another point guard, and that's Tyus Jones, who is for Memphis. I think he's filling in for Ja Morant. I was just looking at the last week because when I'm looking at waiver wire pickups in basketball, you're not going to find a lot of studs at this point in the season on the waiver wire. So you're looking for guys who are hot right now, who can help you right now, especially if you're in a positional crunch. And Tyus Jones, again, is playing over 30 minutes a game, shooting well from the line and taking a lot of free throws. He's at 11 for his last 11 this past week. He gets points, he gets rebounds, he gets a lot of assists, almost double-digit a game, and 2 steals a game. So, again, he's contributing across the board at that point guard position.
You just gave me an idea. It started to make me think, maybe we shouldn't be doing this in terms of positions. We should be doing this in terms of stats. That's what we really should be doing. I think we're going to revolutionize things here. We're going to start talking about just stats. Isn't that crazy?
That would make me have to reorganize all of this. So let's do it next week.
All right, we'll do it. We won't do it. Listen, I wouldn't spring.
But let's not tell Ross about it, and then we'll see how he adjusts.
All right, and not only that, we won't tell him by announcing it on this show, and that will tell us that he was not watching this. Okay. He has an excuse, so it's understandable.
Yeah, he's preoccupied, rightly so.
But seriously, looking, I like that the guy you picked out was a point guard, shooting guard instead of one of these shooting guard small forwards or that sort of thing, because you really are often looking for players like that are filling a certain role. And so I'm thinking about assist guys. Monte Morris is at the top of the list on assist guys of the guys on my watch list. And, he is only 53% owned, so I think that's a great pickup. Eric Gordon is another guy that I think you might take a long look at. He's a shooting guard small forward, so I'm violating my own rule there. But he's got 25 assists in the last 2 weeks, 31, almost 32 minutes a game. The problem with Eric Gordon is injury. But he's gonna give you threes, he's giving you assists, and he's a pretty efficient player overall, but he also puts up a lot of points. He's having a good 2 weeks. He's shooting the lights out. Is that going to last? Probably not. But in basketball, a lot of times you pick up the hot hand, ride him while he's hot. You can even cut him midweek if you need to. So Eric Gordon is another guy that I have on the guards list. I'm going to add another shooting guard, small forward. Actually has power forward eligibility too. Joe Ingles, average Joe. I talk about him a lot. One of the reasons I really like him as a pickup now, if you're watching this for thinking about tonight, Utah is one of the few teams that is playing. A lot of times you need to look for those teams that you can fill in a lot of guys on the off days. And it so happens Joe Ingles is a very helpful pickup this week. I picked him up again. I think he's going to be pretty good overall. Case, I'll throw it back to you. Any other guards that you would look at, especially looking at like assists, steals, 3-pointers? Who are some of those people?
Not for 3-pointers, but all the other metrics would be Dennis Smith Jr. in Portland. Obviously, I believe it was CJ McCollum just got announced to have had I think a collapsed lung yesterday or the day before it came out. So he's going to be out for a while. So he's going to be getting some run there. Dennis Smith Jr., he's averaging 35 minutes a game, shooting 47% from the field, putting up points, at assists, almost 6 a game in the last week, rebounds about 5 a game in the last week. So he's doing really well there too. And then our cover boy today, Chris Duarte, is a shooting guard out of Indiana, the Pacers, a rookie. So he was not the highest rookie coming out. And so he's surprising a lot of people. He's gotten chances because of injury, and he hasn't missed. He's shooting over 55% from the field. He's making 3-pointers. He shoots well from the line. He gets more than 2 steals a game. So in the last week. So he is putting up numbers that justify the minutes he's getting. In the last week, he's actually the 43rd ranked player in Yahoo.
That's why he's the cover boy. Now listen, there's certain players, and you and I especially like this, Casey. So with Ross not here, we can really get into this. We love talking about the strategy of things. So I'm looking at a certain player, and I wanted to share this because with the viewers out there, by the way, viewers out there, put your comments below. We would love to hear from you and have some discussions with you. A guy like Gary Payton II, he over the last 2 weeks,
little gloves,
really little gloves. He's ranked 116th overall. But here's the problem: if you look at his numbers, they're very inflated by the fact that his field goal percentage as a guard is almost 63%. Is that going to keep up? No. See, if you look at Gary Payton's numbers, he's got 9 steals in the last 2 weeks. So that's good. His shooting percentage is outstanding. But he's got almost nothing else other than he's not turning the ball over. So don't get fooled by the numbers. You've got to look at all the categories and see which of these players actually lines up and is making sense as a pickup. So let me ask you a question, Casey. I don't know, are you up to speed on Eric Bledsoe? He, to me, is one of these guys that's floating on and off of rosters. And I think we could use some orientation to how to think about Eric Bledsoe as a player. I don't mean to put you on the spot on a specific player. If you want to talk about somebody else, you can. But I'm curious, if you take a look at his numbers, how would you analyze them?
Well, actually, ironically, on the season, preseason, he was ranked 165. So far this season, he's 160th. So his numbers, to go with Dennis Green, they are what they thought they were. His famous Arizona Cardinals rant. He doesn't shoot a great percentage. He shoots about 40% from the field, but he does stuff well, and he's on the court. He's not somebody I would want to have to rely on, but as a point guard, shooting guard, he gets to the line. He makes a 3-pointer a game. He's going to give you close to 10 points a game. 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists. So he does a little bit of everything really well. So except for the shooting percentage.
It kind of makes him a good fill-in in a given week. I'm not saying he's somebody who's going to be a mainstay on your team. You probably pick him up sometimes. You cut him. You're going to have players like that. Another guy who's like that is Jay Crowder. I talked about. We're not to the forwards yet, but they're like that. These are players that float in and off your team. But the thing about Eric Bledsoe that I like is he gets assists and he gets steals, and he doesn't turn the ball over a ton for having the ball as much as he actually does. He's averaging close to 23 minutes a game, so he's not the player he once was. Don't get fooled by that. Sometimes the name from the past, because if you've been playing fantasy basketball for a while, Eric Bledsoe was a very valuable commodity at one point. But even so, don't go the other way with it when it's like, well, now he's not a name and I'm going to shy away from it. He's still a useful player. Here's another great player to pick up, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. This guy's 52% owned, 28 minutes a game. He is one of these 3-point specialists, but he also is getting assists and steals. Meanwhile, Washington's playing pretty well, and he's a big part of it. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the 21st overall player. Okay, so I know it's a small sample size, and you do have to keep that in mind, but Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has consistently put up close to top 100 numbers for his whole career over the last 3 or 4 years. I can't remember how many it's been.
So, Dan, if I can ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
Why do you think of 2 weeks as the sweet spot when you're looking at statistics? And do you do total or average?
That's a great question. What I find is that if you look at the last 30 days, you're not going to get a sense of how they're playing now. Here's the thing. I actually check them all. I check 7, I check 14 and 30. And it's not like I pour over these numbers the whole time, but that is the way you can get a sense of it. Are they doing well over the last 7, over the last 14, over the last 30? So why is 14 the sweet spot? It kind of roughs out the edges of both. It captures some aspects of whether they're playing well now and some aspects of whether they've been playing well for a while. I also look at seasonal numbers. You asked me, do I look at average stats or total stats? I look at both, but I primarily look at total stats. First, I want to look at total stats just to see what's this player doing? And I look at the numbers as they stack up against the league. If I want to get a deeper assessment, though, I might look at average stats and consider what's going on here. The reason that I don't start with average stats, though, is something we've talked about before. You could see somebody who has maybe 2 great games and has not played at all. And so you look at average stats and you're like, what? They're 9th in the league? Wow. This happened with Frank Kaminsky earlier in the year. Yep. He had 1 good game. Now, here's a dead giveaway. When you look at averages and they're all something 0.0, exactly on the number, they've probably played 1 game, because you average more than 1 game and you're going to get some crooked numbers. So I find that the 14 days is the sweet spot for me as the place to start. But I really want to encourage all of you out there, don't just start in one place and stay there. Look at the numbers. Try to think about what does it actually mean. Good question, Case. All right, let's move on to forwards. I'll throw it to you first. What forwards did you have in mind to scoop up?
Well, one that's actually on your team I saw that's been playing really well is Royce O'Neal in Utah. He qualifies at shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. So he actually gives you 5 position eligibility on a standard Yahoo roster, which is really nice. And he's shooting in the last week, he's averaging over 10 points a game, almost 8 rebounds a game, more than 4 assists a game, and a steal a game. And he's shooting 78% from the field and 75% from the free throw line. So he qualifies at a bunch of positions, both the forward positions and even shooting guard. And he gives you such well-rounded stats. And he's playing over 30 minutes a game. So it's not like he's with an average of 3 games played in the last week, which is how many games Utah's had. So he's doing it consistently. It's not as we just mentioned, Frank Kaminsky, a one-off where he had 1 super hot game, and that's kind of created the statistical line that you're seeing.
Great point. He's a great pickup. Another guy that I like is Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a small forward, power forward. He's currently, his minutes are way up there right now. I think that's partly because Luka Doncic is out. I think it's because Porzingis has been out. So Finney-Smith is getting more time now. This is another thing. Do not analyze numbers without understanding the context. You have to think about, why is this player playing more? But at the same time, those guys are dinged up. Guys get dinged up. He's probably going to get this kind of playing time. And if I look at him, he's not going to wow you with everything. But over the last 2 weeks, he's got 11 steals, 19 assists, 16 3-pointers. His field goal percentage is good. And do you know how many turnovers he has in 2 weeks? 4 in the whole time, because he doesn't handle the ball that much. So, as I always say, you have to look at your team and see, how does this player fit into the context of my team? When you're drafting a team, you want some superstars who can carry you big time in certain categories. But then you're going to need to look at who do you round it out with. Here's another guy I like, Herbert Jones, the New Orleans Pelicans, small forward. I don't tend to like guys who have just one position, because it limits where you can play them. But then again, basketball it's a game of attrition and numbers. You plug in as many guys as you can, because generally speaking, in most leagues, it's about counting stats, unless they're really hurting you in the percentages. Herbert Jones, actually, when I go to my watch list, the guys that I have on there, and I go to steals in the last 2 weeks, who's at the top of my list? Herbert Jones. Now, why is that important? Because steals might be the category you need this week. Remember, we say this all the time, when you get to Thursday, and this is one of the reasons we do the waiver wire on Thursdays, you want to assess, where am I at in the week? What is it that I need? Herbert Jones is a guy he's a perfect fit if you need steals. Meanwhile, he's got 9 blocks in the last 2 weeks also. He's not going to put up a ton of points, no 3-pointers. His rebounds are fine, his assists are fine, his turnovers are fine, but he's mostly going to get you steals and some blocks. So I think he's a great pickup. Case, how about you? Any other players on the forward list we need
on
to
the forward list? I'm always hesitant to recommend an Atlanta small forward, because it's such a crowded position for the Atlanta Hawks. But two of the guys in that rotation, Kevin Huerter and Danilo Gallinari, are both playing really well right now. And they're averaging decent minutes. Huerter's playing 35 minutes a game in the last week over the course of 3 games, and Gallinari is at 26 minutes a game, or 27, I'm sorry. And they're both shooting lights out right now, and that's what they're known for. So this isn't an anomaly that we're talking about where it's somebody who typically shoots 28% from 3 and 38% from the field, and suddenly they're shooting in the 50s for both. These are shooters. That's what they're known for. And so if you need a 3-point specialist or you need points, they both can help you there. And they each get a fair amount of assists and rebounds too, considering their position. So as much as I'm reluctant to recommend a crowded rotation like the Atlanta Hawks, both of those guys are earning their minutes right now and putting up impressive numbers.
All right, good point. Now here's another guy that I like, Cody Martin. He's a shooting guard, small forward. I've actually thought about picking up this guy multiple times. Now, why did I not? The reason I didn't is his schedule never worked with my schedule. I was looking in there and I was like, I need a guy, but he's playing on the days where all of my guys are playing, so he's not worth the pickup to me. But here's the thing. He's averaging 32 minutes a game over the last 14. Again, I'm using that magic number just as a place to dip in. I'm not saying that's the gold standard or you're always going to do that. But I've been tracking his numbers. They work over 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. He's been playing quite well. He's getting good minutes. He's also shooting a very high percentage. And in the meantime, he's getting assists. He's getting steals. He's not turning the ball over. He hits some threes. This is one of those guys who can just fill in and give you some numbers across the board. And sometimes that's what you need. Listen, sometimes you're going to look at your team and think, what stats do I need? If you can't figure it out, just add somebody who gives you a little of everything. That will help. Let's say you don't have a lot of time, which it can happen. It can happen to the best of us. We don't have a lot of time in a given week. Grab a player who's going to help you kind of across the board. Another good example of that is Jay Crowder. He's not going to win you leagues, generally speaking, but these are the players that can make a big difference. They could help you win a matchup that gets you into the playoffs, and then you win the league. I guess in that way, Jay Crowder could win you your league. You know, you've got to work with what you have. These are the kind of players to pick up. By the way, I want to echo Royce O'Neal. He's shooting 72% over the last 2 weeks. I've loved having him. Yeah, another great guy to scoop up.
I think an important thing to note, and it's something we stress in the baseball season a lot too for fantasy baseball, because baseball and basketball are the two of the longer fantasy seasons, right? Football is now it's 17 games. It's typically 16 games, but and the last 2 to 3 games don't count. But one of the things you have to be mindful of during one of these longer seasons is adding incremental value. Sometimes I think we get caught up in the notion that we have to find the home run that's going to completely transform our roster overnight. And the truth is, if you need assists and you can find somebody who just increases it by, maybe 1 assist per night or an assist and a half per night over what you have now and doesn't hurt you in other ways, if you do that often enough over the course of the season, by the end of the season, you have a really deep and really strong roster. So incremental increases in value is an important thing to keep in mind. So some of these guys we're recommending, they're not world beaters. They're not going to be in the All-Star game. They're not going to be the guy who kind of carries the torch for your team. But if they can add incremental value in a place where you need it, now's the time to add that value, because if you do it well enough over the course of the season, by the time you get to the playoffs, your roster is so deep and so stacked that you become a much more formidable opponent.
That's a great point. And one thing I'll add to it, you want to maximize your roster spots. So sometimes you might have a guy who is out for the night, and maybe you have an IR plus spot where you can just plug him in there, and you can pick up a guy just for free. That's another way incrementally. This is adding to what Casey's saying. Incrementally, you won't be building your team in the long run, but you are for that week. So do both. Build the best team you can each week. Build the best team you can overall. You should look into trades that can do that as well. It's one of the reasons why, and Casey, this will not surprise you, but I love the 2-for-1 deal where I get the 1 because I'm getting the best player and I get a roster spot. And that roster spot is the kind of thing where you can bring in guys like Monte Morris or Royce O'Neal or Jay Crowder, or you name it, and just bring in the guys based on need. It's very nice to have that flexibility. Case, let's move to centers now, and we'll wrap up on that. So who's at the top of your list in terms of centers? Centers is usually actually, I find, the thinnest position.
Yeah, I was just going to say center is lacking in a lot of depth right now. I think Marcus Morris in LA for the Clippers might be the top of the list for somebody who qualifies at center, because he also qualifies at power forward. He is playing over 30 minutes a game in the last week, shooting over 50% from the field. He shoots 80% from the line, or he shoots well from the line, which is not very common in a big man. He gives you he's actually turned into a bit of a 3-point specialist, so he can space the floor. In the last 4 games alone, he has 15 threes, which if you're averaging almost 4 3-pointers a game from your center power forward and shooting at a high percentage, that's pretty powerful. It hurts him a little bit in rebounds. He's only getting 4+ rebounds per game. 2+ rebounds per game. I'm sorry, 4+ assists per game. So he's a little bit of a backwards center, but at a thin position, if you can add that 3-point shooting and you can add those percentages from the field, that's definitely powerful.
Yep. And listen, I'm going to add this guy. This won't surprise you. Well, maybe it will surprise you. I don't know. Kevin Love. It doesn't surprise you that I'm talking about a Cav. But Kevin Love, he hasn't been high on my list in terms of a fantasy basketball player because he's gotten injured. He's underperformed. But he's performing pretty well. It's interesting because his minutes are slightly under 20 over the last 30 days, let's say, just as a sample I'm looking at right now. But he's got 129 points in that time, 28 threes. He's getting decent amount of assists. And, he's not even turning the ball over that much. So, meanwhile, guess what he is from the line over the last 30 days? 17 out of 17. That kind of thing can really help you. Now, I understand it's only 17 free throws over that time, so does it help you that much? But this is to Casey's incremental point. You get enough guys like that, and you're going to end up winning certain matchups in that one category. It's 1 out of 9 categories. That can be huge. So Kevin Love's a guy I'm looking at. Another guy that I like a lot is, I'm blanking on his name. Why am I forgetting? The center from Miami.
Dwayne Dedmon.
Dwayne Dedmon, exactly. I've had my eye on him for a while, but again, his schedule never matched up. So listen, if you're in the playoffs and you're trying to keep a player away from a person, you could potentially do that if you feel like you've got a matchup that really works, but that's rarely going to happen. You're going to have to let go of players that you like that are doing well when they just don't fit into the team context or they don't fit into the schedule. It happens all the time. Even so, Dwayne Dedmon is a guy that I'd be looking at. Case, who else at center?
I really like Dwayne Dedmon. I mean, he's only playing 20 minutes a game, so you want to talk about efficiency in those 20 minutes. He's getting over 8 rebounds a game. So with Adebayo being out for a while, I think Dedmon is definitely near the top, if not at the top of the list. And PJ Tucker is the other front court mate for Dedmon in Miami, who's trying to make up for the productivity lost by the Adebayo injury. So he's somebody I'd put there, and somebody who, he's not setting the world on fire, but Larry Nance Jr. in Portland is doing a really nice job across the board.
Him. That's hilarious.
And so he's playing 25 minutes a game. He's more of a points and assists guy, I think, than a rebounds guy. So in a traditional big man role, he's not helping you with rebounds and blocks very much. But he does get steals, he does get assists, and he shoots good percentages.
What's crazy is that JaVale McGee is averaging over the last 30 days 14 minutes a game, and yet he ranks as the 100th overall player. He's got 12 blocks, 7 steals, 111 rebounds, and 158 points somehow in that amount of time. I mean, I think it speaks to a great Phoenix team that can move the ball around and get him some easy scores, but he's been pretty valuable. And don't be afraid to pick up. I would say you don't want more than one of these guys generally, but don't be afraid to pick up a guy who's averaging 14 or 15 minutes if they're putting up that kind of efficiency, especially because if an injury happens, this guy comes in and he can play a lot more. Anybody to add, Case, or are we done for tonight? I
think that's a good baseline of players. I mean, another one I like who I didn't mention is a shooting guard small forward is Luke Kennard in Clipperland there, 29 minutes a game for the last week. He's making over 3 3-pointers per game, scoring a lot of points. He has 61 points in 4 games. So he's averaging 15 points a game. He's averaging 4 assists per game, getting a steal per game. So he's doing a really nice job, and he's a 3-point specialist. So he can help you in multiple categories.
Okay, so remember, you can go to Yahoo and you can actually click on in your watch list or even just in the player list, you can click on a given category and you can just see if you need somebody in that particular category, click on it. I talked about this last week. I think Maxi Kleber, he's a guy who can hit threes and blocks at the same time while qualifying at center. It's just a rare combination. So sometimes you want to look for that. How does it fit into the team context? What do they need? And in this case, that's a weird setup that works. Or maybe you decide you're going to pick up Hassan Whiteside, or my old favorite, who had me faceplant last year in terms of recommending him. But he blocks lots of shots. He's very efficient. And I'm not saying he's the player to pick up necessarily. In fact, his numbers are way down right now, and I think he's a game-time decision right now. So maybe not the best time to pick him up. But I'm saying look at the kind of player, look at the numbers, see how they fit in your team, see how they fit in your schedule. That's very important. Sometimes people are like, I want to pick up this player, and then they realize I have 10 guys going these 3 days, and this guy is too. Essentially, you've picked up somebody who's not worth it to you. Unless
he's not worth it to you, but I'm going to disagree a little bit. If you prevent your opponent from getting him, it's also not the worst place just to have him stashed on your bench if you think, especially as you get closer to the playoffs, that's a bit of the gamesmanship. You're also looking to win by preventing your opponent from getting points. So it's a consideration.
That's true. Also, I mean, listen, don't be afraid to pick up somebody who doesn't fit in well in your schedule if you think they're a long-term pickup. Pick up the long-term pickup all the time. Guys, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we will get back to you personally. Thank you, Casey. It's good being with you. Ross, shout out to you. We're thinking of you. We will see you same time next week, Thursdays, 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 Pacific.
Hey everyone! Castmaster here, overload of knowledge and part-time customer service rep for Killcliff. Wanted to announce my new Killcliff Octane CBD flavor, Killer Cliffsicle. Yeah, that's right. It's orange and vanilla gummies. Woo! I know your drink hole is gonna be happy because I know everything. Just go to killcliff.com and get yours today.